I'm going to have a really good show today because you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. Hello. Oh my gosh, this computer is lagging. Okay, great to be back. How are you? I've been pissed off, about the gutting of the Schumer amendment. I guess that's the worst thing that's happened in disclosure in the last couple of months. Everybody had their hopes pinned on the Schumer amendment, and it passed the Senate. And so I thought, well, it'll certainly pass the House. Well, no. And cut the music. Hi again. And on top of that, we don't even know who exactly gutted it. Now, I know everyone on Twitter is saying that it was Mike Turner, Mike Rogers, the new House Speaker, Mike Rogers, yeah, and whatever, Mike Johnson, yeah, 3 Mikes, and a Mitch. Mitch McConnell jumped in at the last minute just to push it over the edge. Now, that's what they're all saying, but the thing is, none of them are copping to that. So, as Matt Laszlo reported, nobody even knows exactly who took it out, but their reasons were that it could harm national security. That was the only reason given. And it's a pretty weak reason, but everyone on Twitter is trying to see the silver lining, and that is that at least we know who the enemy is now. And I think it's pretty certain that it is that group of people. But, what kind of a system do we have where you can't even find out? Like Schumer didn't even lift a finger to go find out who gutted his own bill. And for what reason? It makes me feel like people that we are looking at as up-and-coming stars in this field, in the political world, all of a sudden something happens. Not all of a sudden, but seems like there's a change. And like someone had gone to them and said, look, you don't know what you're messing with here. The minute you open this door, it's going to be pandemonium and the whole country is going to explode. So you need to leave this alone. And if that isn't enough, call them demons, because there's enough people, apparently, and this is coming out more and more, that religion was a factor in the cover-up, especially in the Air Force. We've heard rumors of this, but it's coming up more and more. I mean, someone just recently, I don't remember the article, but it just came out in an article that stated that someone squashed the further Air Force investigations by saying that they considered it a demonic element and engaging with it would only make things worse. This is a bullshit excuse. It's one of many. Anything that'll stick to the wall, they'll throw. And if it sticks, good. If it doesn't, throw something else, right? So, yeah, that's where we're at with disclosure. I'm not afraid that disclosure is not going to happen. And, right now, the optimistic view is, okay, bring on catastrophic disclosure. That term just came out, right? Catastrophic disclosure is really clearly catastrophic only for the people that are hiding it. There is some concern about the markets crashing and stuff like that, but I don't see any reason why they have to. If speculators go crazy, yeah, they can always crash the market. But if we were to just keep level heads, I don't think it would crash the market. But I'm getting ahead of myself because what I want to talk about today is quite a few things. I'm really excited about today's show because I'm going to try to tackle the bigger picture. And I want to talk about where we're at today with disclosure and also the road ahead and what possibly is a brand new world waiting for us. We could be on the cusp of a change on this planet like we've never seen before. And I can hardly believe I'm saying that because I really never expected the world to change this much. And now I'm expecting it. We've seen changes, not the kinds we like. We've seen an acceleration of war, an erosion of trust in all of our institutions, especially government, because they lie to us all the time. And this is a symptom. Censorship is also a symptom of a failing empire. Once you start lying to the people enough, then they know that you're lying, okay, and they don't trust you. And so if they come up with a narrative that they want to push, like about the vaccines or anything like that, if it's important to them to make us all believe it, they will use censorship to try to, win the argument by saying, you can't say that. That's not true. We are the ones who know the truth, and we're the ones who are telling you the truth, and everybody else is disinformation and is censored. These are bad signs for our democracy. It's almost gone. But what isn't gone is the power of the people. But right now they're divided, and so they don't have the kind of power that they would have. I think some of the other governments in the world seem to fear the people more than this government does. This government, when it comes to UFOs, they don't care. They'll fucking lie. I'm not supposed to swear in the first 15 minutes. They'll lie. They'll kill, supposedly. I've seen, the Forrestal story. Jumped out of a window, but no, I don't think he did. I think he was killed. JFK may have been killed to keep this thing secret. David Grush is worried about these killings, but it's not just killings, of course. It's they throw everything to keep it secret. So, I think that it's going to be a fun show to talk about where we're at in disclosure, and then talk about really the most exciting thing is that what all this might lead to. And of course, I don't know, but I'm going to give you my best guess, and it's the culmination of 30 years of my research, and I want to talk about it, get your feedback on it, and let's see what else. Also, you guys sent in some excellent questions, and I'm going to cover those. That's probably going to be my favorite part because it's easier than trying to make this presentation. But I'll get to that in the second half. And I don't know how long this first half is going to go. But I'm calling this episode Disclosure and the New World Ahead. And I don't mean to say that I know that a new world is coming, but I think it is. And so I do want to talk about that as much as I can speculate on it. But let's talk about where we're at today. So we just said that the Schumer amendment got gutted. We don't even know by who. But Stephen Bassett says that he thinks, and he's the eternal optimist, right? I love Stephen for that because he's giving the president a path, and so is David Grush. They're basically handing him the ball and saying, you know, take it and run with it if you can. But so far, there's been no takers. But Stephen says that if we hold a Senate hearing next year in January, and we have maybe 10, 15 firsthand, what he said was David Grush's, but I think it would be David Grush's with additional firsthand knowledge, so even more powerful than David. If they were to testify, he says that it's game over. Because at that point, there's just no further denying of the truth. And I think he might be right. So the way Stephen sees it, and I'm hoping, this is my best case scenario, the way Stephen sees it is if we hold this hearing and it goes on for like 2, 3, 4, 5 days, that's it. The president has to come out at that point and say, we are not alone. And at that point, Stephen says we can then reintroduce the UAP amendment, the Schumer amendment, as originally written, as a standalone bill, and it will pass with flying colors. Because once the president makes the announcement, there's just no backing down from that. I can't imagine this happening. Everything in my gut tells me that it's not going to happen. And the reason I think that I feel that way is because of the magnitude of this situation. Honestly, there's been so many times where I have just gotten myself into a tizzy of anger about what's going on. I'm not the only one that's going to feel this anger when the truth comes out. Us in the UFO community, we're softies, really. I mean, we're not going to be a problem, right? We're already over our anger. We're living with our anger at the government for keeping this secret, but we're used to it. But imagine the scientific community. Imagine how foolish they're going to feel. And Lou Elizondo made reference to this when he was talking about somber, because they're going to have embarrassment over the fact that the government disinformation campaign worked really well on them. Because once the government came out and said there's nothing to this, the scientific realm was funded by the government. I mean, universities are funded by the government. And if you said that you were going to do a paper on ETs or UFOs, looking into that, you wouldn't get, it would be a career ender for you, and you could lose your grant money. So grant money was not going out for UFO research, part of the disinformation campaign. And imagine how they're going to feel when they realize that for 90 years, we've had extraterrestrial vehicles in our possession that could have been studied by the scientific community, but was not, because it was held for weapons development. And of course, if you want to try to forgive these people for doing that, you could consider the fact that they are of this belief and they have had this mindset where if the enemy is possibly developing something like this, then we have to develop it even faster. I mean, this has been our policy from as far back as I can think of, when it came to biologicals, weapons, for example. Some of the most hideous research humans have ever done on animals, and probably humans too, the CIA. But the thinking at the time was that Russia was developing these biological weapons. We have to develop them too. And that kind of motive just drove all kinds of evil things to happen. And that it's still going on today. And David Grush made reference to this in his original presentation, that we are in a reverse engineering Cold War with Russia and China on these HE craft. Each of these countries has their own crashed recoveries, and they are working on reverse engineering it. And whoever cracks the nut first wins. Wins what? Well, wins full spectrum domination. Okay. So that's the headset that they're in. And it angers me because there's no vision there of utopia. There's no, but imagine the scientists thinking, we could have been studying this material and producing things for the benefit of humanity, including clean energy tech, which David mentioned, that he's hoping this technology can be developed into clean energy tech that, and also, there's, that's the big one for me, but who knows what else we could get out of it. I mean, we're talking about an advanced species, an advanced technology. And scientists were told to leave it alone and don't touch it. And now imagine how they're going to feel. They're going to feel lied to. Well, they were lied to. But how are they going to feel about how well that lie worked? It's gonna upset them. I mean, and then when you look at, I guess, religion, there are going to be, well, Lou talked about, and I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to go down that way right now. I want to talk just before we leave the subject of where we're at now. I wanted to bring up something that, as a programmer, my background is in programming. And what I noticed in that world is that there's something that in that world that really strongly, closely parallels what's happening in our world today. So let me explain. It has to do with what they call legacy software. And that means software that's been developed for many, many years, like started 20 years ago, in some language, and then they developed it and parts of it were rewritten and bugs were fixed and then new features were added and then the language changed and then we rewrote that and added this feature and fixed that bug and brought in some more people. And pretty soon what happens is the code becomes bloated and huge and so huge and so kind of band-aided, that nobody really understands at this point how the damn thing works. They can dig into little parts of it and add a new feature, but it's really, really hard because you're working with code that is old and not written very well, and then new standards have come into play, but they have not been applied to this code base, and so you can't figure things out, and you don't really know what's going to happen when you make this change. Well, this is a state of legacy software that drives companies to say, you know what, we just can't go on with this code base. It's taking us 20 times the cost of adding a simple dialogue window, like a part of a new feature, than it would if it was brand new code. I mean, it's taking days and days just to get this one little thing added because the engineers have no idea what the hell they might be breaking by making these changes, because it's just a big monolith of shitty code. It wasn't shitty to begin with, but that's what happens to code after you just keep changing it and adding new things and bringing new people into it. And they don't understand the system fully, but they're going to make this part work. And boy, they did this in a completely different way. And other people can't understand that. And then, that's where we're at. With legacy software, it eventually has to be abandoned. You have to let it go, because it can't be, it's a system that has reached its end. And I guess you know what I'm talking about, how the parallel is so close to what's going on in this world. We have a system that is horribly complex, and it's also, more importantly, corrupted as hell. And so we have so many problems now in we call this a capitalist system, but it's end stage capitalism where the wealthy are just getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and we're becoming basically indentured servants to the 1%. And whatever they demand and whatever they decide is the truth, and censorship will enforce that. And it's not a good system. It needs to be abandoned. It can't be changed anymore. For example, you can't just vote for the right solution and then it gets fixed, because what's happening in Washington now is the establishment, really the deep state, as I would call it, they're in control. And they're not really Republican or Democrat. They are the military-industrial complex and, all the corporations that are robbing us and raping us. They're all in it together, and we are... what was my point? I think I lost my point on that one. That we have to abandon this system. Oh yeah, because you can't vote in a change. It doesn't work. I thought President Obama was going to be the change that we all needed. And boy, and then I saw the nutcase from I forgot what her name is now, but she goes, "How's that hope and change thing working out for you?" Oh, I hated her for that. But it turns out, I hate to say it, but because she wasn't smart or anything, but she was right. There was no change. And why is there no change? Because the system is set up right now exactly how the 1% want it. And it's benefiting them, but it's not benefiting us. And no matter who you vote for, those policies just never get changed, do they? So our democracy is dead. I'm not even going to talk about Gaza. Everybody knows it's a shit show, and Israel is going to lose their good reputation for good. Their reputation is gone now. It's never going to come back. They've lied to us, even worse than the U.S. lies to us about war. Okay, as I've said, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it. But going back to that parallel, the legacy software thing, I think that's where we're at. We've got a system that we just have to give up, but it's not going to happen until something triggers, a revolution. And what is that going to be? It's either going to be World War III, or the threat of World War III, or perhaps disclosure. Now, I can see what the capitalists want. They want World War III. I don't know what kind of madness they're thinking about. You hear President Biden saying, we can fight 2-3 wars at a time. This is the United States, for God's sakes. I don't know if there's ever been a more demoralizing comment that has come out of the mouth of a president which I despise, by the way. Not because he's Republican or Democrat. I despise him because he's a smug son of a bitch who doesn't care about the people. What he cares about is his own ego. And that's the same with Trump. The only good thing about Trump is that he doesn't like war. So if he gets in, that's good that we maybe won't have war. But I've seen the establishment push Trump around too. You know, Trump claimed to be the anti-establishment, and even more so now he's running on that. But the thing is, when he gets in, he'll do what the rest do. He'll comply, like he gave his big tax cut for the rich. He'll do those kind of things in lieu of doing anything good for the people, because it turns out that doing anything good for the people is just impossible. There's roadblocks everywhere, including the division that we have between left and right, which is a false division whipped up by the media, mainstream media, and it's intended to keep us weak. Well, actually, the media is not trying to keep us weak. What they're trying to do is keep us angry at the other side, because, you know, anger always makes for good ratings, no matter whether it's in a newspaper or a video. It's, you know, like Sting said, it was the best of times. Newspapers screamed for blood. It was the best of times. Yeah, right. Best of times for them. But anyway, I digress. We need to abandon this system. So what's going to cause that to happen? I think either we're going into full-fledged World War III or disclosure is going to happen. And let's talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. I note that Richard Dolan is feeling positive right now about disclosure, and so is Stephen Bassett. I'm wondering, I kept thinking it was game over, guys. I mean, over a year ago, I thought it was, when David Grush came out, I thought, well, this is it. Disclosure has to happen from here. But it hasn't. We've got a Congress that just ignored the truth, and probably was given, you know, a warning by the intelligence community not to poke here, and they complied like little lemmings. It's very sad to me, the way they rolled over. The way they did not pursue the most important story in the world, and the way the mainstream media is still trying to downplay the truth of this, probably on the cue of our government. So they continue their disinformation. They have still not admitted that NHI presence is here on the earth. I don't see Biden doing that. I think he hates the subject. So if he does do it, it's because he's forced to. And I don't know what's going to force the issue. Maybe we'll have to have those hearings. We'll see. But let's go on to the next question, which is, why should we want disclosure? Well, I would say we need saving, if we're honest. Things aren't getting better. They're just getting worse day by day. And it's been going on for a whole century, I'm reading now. A century in which we should have made incredible progress towards a brighter future. And instead, we're just digging a deeper and deeper hole. I can't count on humans fixing themselves anymore. So I think we need disclosure. Now, I think that it's exciting because we're about to find out what the universe is really like. or specifically what the living beings in our galaxy are really like. And that is not something I ever expected to get to in my lifetime. But it's very possible that we may get to see that. And the other thing is, on this subject, is there are a lot of people who don't really, they're really interested in this subject. You see them on UFO Twitter, but they're not really sure why they want disclosure. And I see this as probably mixed up with the concern that is being sort of whipped up on Twitter about malevolence, so there really, in my opinion, there's no evidence of malevolence. I think the best we can say is we don't know why they're here, but they don't seem malevolent. But everyone is gravitating towards, there are people who want this to be a fearful thing. I don't know exactly why. It's a psychological thing. And so they focus, on whatever they can find. Like they'll focus on the fact that Lou used the word somber in his famous interview with Kurt Jaimungal on Theories of Everything. And I went, if you haven't seen it, there is a good video I did on that comment, because he was not trying to say that these things are malicious and evil. He was trying to say that it is going to be sombering if the world knows what Lou knows, because what Lou knows, and I was reading between the lines here based on what he was saying, what Lou knows is that our origin is wrapped up with ET. And we don't know necessarily which species, but I would say the Elohim, the ones that said, let us make man in our image, those beings genetically engineered us. And that is a different narrative than saying God created us. So that's sombering. And also, what if we were, in fact, if the Sumerian clay tablets creation story is correct, we were, created as a slave race, as a labor force for another species. And if that's true, that's sombering. It's nothing we can't get over. But so I think what happens on Twitter is that people try to push the negative agenda, and that we should fear these things, and or they're demonic, and it just I can't tell you how much it crushes my soul to read those kinds of things. It really does, because it goes against my greatest hopes and dreams, which is for a Star Trek future. And I really believe that's where we're headed. And I really have to ask these people that are, pushing the negative thing, do you really think that after suffering so much in the last, say, 100 years, where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and now things are so screwed up in this country that we don't even have health care unless you're working. And if you are working, you're not getting paid enough. It's hard to make ends meet for anyone except for the preferred, occupations like medical or software. If you're not in one of those, or of course, Wall Street and all that, if you're not part of the 1%, it's a hellhole here. So I don't know what my point was there, but Yeah, okay, I remember now. So it is just depressing for me to watch these people push this agenda because, first of all, there's not enough evidence for it, and secondly, why don't they get that we have something good coming to us? I can tell you that because I'm an old guy. Maybe young folks don't really get it because they're like the frogs in the pot that the water's already pretty hot when they were born, and it's just getting hotter. But that's for them. That's just a slight change. For us, we're saying you shouldn't accept this as normal. We are so unhappy as a people. And we could be so happy if we fixed all of our problems. But right now, everything looks unfixable. So that's one reason why I want disclosure to happen. And how will disclosure fix the world? That is a big question that I want to get into a little bit here. Get my iPad up here. Check my notes here. Yeah. So when we look at the new world ahead, I've got some theories about what might happen. And this is a difficult question because we know so little about really what's going on. The only thing we have to latch onto is the abductions that have happened and the testimony from those. And that's about it. And the UFO sightings, and of course, any kind of telepathic communication that has happened outside of the abduction realm, anything like that, and that's about it. No one has ever come out and really addressed us as humans. No, the ETs have never made a proclamation, so everything is still secret, right? And this is causing a lot of people to think that maybe there's something nefarious going on. Why are they keeping it secret? And I'm going to address that later because I don't think it is nefarious. But I am sick of the secrecy as much as anybody else. I think we've gotten to the point where something better happen pretty soon, or there just is no justice in the universe. So that's kind of where I feel. But I've got some ideas about what might be part of our transformation into this Star Trek future that I'm hoping to see. One question that I think comes up a lot is in our minds. I don't think we're talking about it much. But the question is, if we do get technology that allows us to escape the confines of the Earth, we can travel in space, just like the rest of the inhabitants of the galaxy. Wouldn't that make us like just completely at a disadvantage because everyone else has really advanced technology and they have telepathy and expanded consciousness, and we're just babies, and I don't see how that would work, because it would be like, I guess, putting a bunch of babies in an adult house and letting them roam around and break whatever they want. And it just doesn't seem natural or right. So what if there is a leveling up process that the ETs can perform on the human race? What would that look like? I'm thinking telepathy, for one. That could solve so many problems. Mental telepathy, like all the rest of the ETs seem to have. There's only a few ETs that actually talk, types of ETs, but but telepathy is the standard. It seems to be the standard. So what if we were given telepathy? I mean, what if all they had to do was turn on some sort of beam and it activated our pineal gland and turned on telepathy and other psi abilities as well? That could bring us together because suddenly we understand each other better. And that's the key to unity, is understanding each other. Once we really, you've heard me, my subscribers have heard me use this example before, but, with a family, you trust your family members because you understand them. And the one reason you understand them is because you've been with them all your life. But another reason is because you share the same genes. So it's like you have a really confident assessment of that person. You know where they're coming from, and you like where they're coming from in a lot of ways. And so they're your family. And of course, families that don't get along, that won't apply. But I'm trying to just use this example of what brings us together. And it's really trusting each other. And we can't really trust each other unless we know that we are the same. So I am the same as you. And when we can recognize that, the love starts coming in, because then I know that if that person is just like me, that they're not going to do something bad to me. And I'm thinking that telepathy will help in that. But there is another factor that I just thought of the other day that really got me excited. Now, this goes into the Bible, and it's about not speaking in tongues. That's bullshit. But it's about that event that everyone derived speaking in tongues from, and it was called Pentecost. And what happened at Pentecost was, at that event, was that Jesus had already been crucified, but he hadn't shown up yet and resurrected yet. And the disciples were in their upper room, as it says. I guess that's where they would, like their group clubhouse, right, where they pray and stuff. And suddenly some kind of miracle happened, which was that these visual tongues with forked tongues that were glowing and just floating in the air. They floated, and they floated above the heads of each one of the disciples. And the imagery there was intended to portray that they were being given the ability to speak in multiple tongues. That's why the tongues were forked. And of course, we have to avoid the forked tongue meaning liar, or hypocrite. That's not what we're talking about here. But now, how did this work? Does it mean that they suddenly knew how to speak German and French and Italian? No. The very strange thing, the way it worked, was one of the disciples, or apostles as they were called after Jesus died, was that one of the apostles went out and gave a speech to a crowd that was waiting and listening. And in this speech, apparently there were a number of different dialects and even separate languages, people of different languages that were in the crowd. And yet, each person was able to hear what that speaker was speaking in their own native language. Now, how is that done? Is that telepathy? But here's the thing that's exciting, because I've always I'm looking for world unity, right? And one of the problems that we have right now that separates us is language. It's very hard to it's very hard to sort of be with another culture that doesn't speak the same language. That's a no-brainer, right? So we need to, in order to bring this sense of unity, this sense of one family of man, where we all have this love for each other because we all recognize that we are the same. There is this light inside of all of us, and we all recognize this light as being the light that's inside of our own self. And when that sense of unity has to be fostered by having actual communication. And I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great if somehow that kind of universal translator was available? Well, apparently it is. And it may not be telepathy. Because telepathy is a very scary thing too, right? For a lot of people. Not for me so much, but they're afraid that, their deepest, darkest thoughts are going to be exposed and make them very embarrassed and feel, violated. There are certain things we just keep to ourselves, but so they find telepathy scary. I wish I could tell them there's nothing to worry about, but you have to experience that yourself. I did, and I told you about that in the last video. But that was 25 years ago, so I haven't experienced it since then. But I do know that there's nothing to worry about there on telepathy. But maybe this type of thing that happened at Pentecost can be used to bring the world together. So that's just an exciting idea that I have. The other thing, of course, that is going to help us get into the part of the leveling up. Well, it's not really part of the leveling up theory that I had. But anyway, just to consolidate that theory, I just want to mention that in a nutshell, I think that there may be a way that we can bring they can bring humanity up to par, up to speed, to some degree, so that when we emerge into the galaxy, we're pretty much capable of navigating and pursuing our dreams in the galaxy and continuing humankind and really beginning our greatest adventure, our Star Trek future. So I do think that that's possible, and that's why I'm excited. I think that they have a solution for bringing us up to speed. And how great is that? It's freaking great. Now, free energy is in my bullet points here as part of the new world ahead. So I'm not going to talk too much about this because I've already covered it in the past, but Stephen Greer has been a hero of mine in this area. He's the one who educated me and really made me think about what free energy can do. Now, what do I mean by free energy? Well, according to David Grush, we've got this NHI technology that does have it does have the keys to clean energy generation. Not sure if we can reproduce it. Not sure if we have or if we could, but I'm pretty sure that if this was opened up to the public to bring all scientists up from all over the world together and work on it, we could get it. And I think that would actually be the end of poverty and homelessness, and everyone would prosper. The whole world would change. The whole centralized structure of everything is partly due to energy being centralized. And once we have free energy, we can basically break this world into just break down the borders, country borders, and things like that. No more borders. There's just millions of cities all over the earth, small cities that are completely independent, but also connected to all other cities. It's just a beautiful situation, and no one is homeless. No one even has to work unless they want to, and many do want to. Probably everyone, but only at what they enjoy doing. All the rest will be machine operated and taken care of by machines and artificial intelligence, and we can work on what we want. Some of us will be working on the artificial intelligence, probably me. I'm a programmer, but I'm going to need the med bed. So I'm looking at this teleprompter, and it's lagging by about 1 second. And so after I finish talking, my lips are still moving in the teleprompter, and that's not good. Hello. Okay. So free energy definitely is the key to overcoming the 1%, and it's going to have to be. Right now, it's in the grip. This technology is in the grips of the military. They just want to hide it until they can figure out how to make a weapon of mass destruction out of it. And the whole reason David Grush came out, he said he didn't want to become an old man and look back and say, I could have done something to improve the world. So clearly he's talking about bringing this technology out to the public for the benefit of humanity instead of the destruction of humanity. And I'm totally with him on that. And I think that free energy is, it fixes the climate, but it also, if we can engineer this technology to be safe, to be used so that we could have a personal power device for our home, for our car, and then for industry, they would have bigger ones, and they're all completely safe, and they all are virtually free to operate. The fuel would be virtually free. And the maintenance would be pretty much zero, because this is a new generation of technology, very advanced and clean. It would fix the world in that sense. There's still some, spiritual stuff that has to people have to come together. We have to be united, and we have to love each other, and we can, but we need to communicate. And that's why I talked about, telepathy, and also this universal translator that seems to be possible, given the story of the Pentecost. And of course, another reason, another part of the new world ahead, besides our exploration of the galaxy, is we get to meet E.T. What the heck is that going to do? I don't know. See, that's where I have to stop thinking, because the possibilities are endless. I was just thinking that before we meet E.T., it would really be nice if we could meet each other on the planet. If I could meet a bunch of Chinese people and North Korean people and just fall in love with them. That's really what I want to happen first, because I'm going to end up falling in love with E.T. as well. I really do think I am. I've heard some stories about the little grays, which everybody is calling robotic and android. I don't believe that. I believe they're simple biological creatures like children that are very good at doing what they do, and they have a master, a father or a controller. That's the taller gray. And I think I could fall in love with these little creatures, from what I've heard. So before that happens, we need to love each other. We humans need to be on a prosperous and happy path, and then we're ready to meet ET and start our Star Trek future. So before I get into the question and answer portion of this presentation, I do want to talk about a couple other things. First of all, one question that comes up a lot on Twitter is, why the secrecy? Why haven't they shown themselves? And if they haven't shown themselves by now, they're never going to. So it's nefarious. It's something nefarious going on. That's what a lot of people want us to believe. But my answer to that is that just because they haven't shown up yet doesn't mean that they won't. Just because Jesus hasn't shown up yet doesn't mean that he won't. I want to stress that when I read the New Testament as an adult with the ancient alien theory in mind, I was struck by the fact that Jesus made reference over and over again to something called the last day. Now that implies that there is going to be a last day, right? And I think I'll look at this monitor on the side here because this one doesn't lag. So sorry if I'm not looking directly at you all the time. So a lot of people don't realize that if this is a project, that there is an end date. There is an end date. Now, a lot of people on Twitter are saying this end date is it could be Armageddon, or it could be an alien invasion, could be World War III. But they don't see it as a successful close of a project. What I'm trying to say is there is an end date according to Jesus, and I believe that, and I think we're quickly approaching that end date, because all signs seem to point that we're converging on some sort of climax, and I don't want that to be World War III. I want that to be disclosure, but we are definitely heading towards something. And that's why I think that, I've been preaching this idea that we're not a farm, that's another idea that's floating around, and very popular idea that we're a farm, somehow. What they're using us for, nobody's really quite sure, but they think maybe we're being farmed, and that they never intend to tell us. They just want to keep us ignorant and, continue to farm us. Which, I think it's much better than that. I think it's a project, like Jesus said, and there's going to be an end day on the project. And that, everyone is familiar with the end of the world idea from the book of Revelation. So it's not like it's a foreign concept that there is going to be an end date. And Jesus said, no one knows what that day is except his Father. So there will be an end date, and that's what I'm really just trying to stress here. So this secrecy is not necessarily nefarious. I guess that's my point. It may be that it's necessary to keep it this way until the last day, until they come out to us. So as you can see, I'm edging towards combining Jesus and ETs together, coming at the same time. Because look, here's the thing. One of those two things is probably going to happen, right? But if one happens, I mean, let me start over again. Either ET is going to come or Jesus is going to come. Well, ET is here. We know that. So now the question is, why is ET here? Is there something, and everyone feels this, like 2028 is, everybody's saying 2028 is the year that is the end date, that something is going to happen, or we either have to disclose by then or some kind of catastrophe. All this stuff, that they're speculating. That's fine. But that, I just, for information's sake, that 2028 date came from a channeler named Daryl Anka. And he channels Bashar, and Bashar gave that date. So that, I mean, you have to take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I am combining Jesus and ET, and I'll tell you why. There's prophesied by Jesus himself saying that in the end days, his Father will send strong delusion to the world that they should believe a lie and be condemned for it. And the delusion will be so strong that even the elite might fall for the trick, if that were possible. So the grammar there is really bad, but what I think what he's essentially saying is that there's going to be a strong delusion sent to the world. And it's very clear to me that that delusion is meant to target the kind of people that don't know right from wrong, because they lie all the time. And so they don't have any kind of morals and ethics. And when you're that kind of a person, it's very hard for you to discern truth from lies, because you're a liar yourself. And so everything people tell you could be a lie in return, because you lie to them. So you don't know what to believe. And because of your willful ignorance and your willful lying and that kind of, if you're an evil person, let's just put it that way, you're a bad person, this lie is going to ensnare you and kind of force you to show your cards. And I don't know what's going to happen after that, but that's what Jesus talks about, strong delusion. Okay, so if anyone has read that in the Bible and they're a Christian or they're a religious zealot, they're immediately going to jump to the conclusion that ET is demonic, they are the strong delusion. And they will perform signs and wonders that will dazzle the people and then convince them that they are God, or they are, and this is the religious view now, is that these are demons that are trying to fool us. Here's my point. This theory is wrong, because human beings do not have the ability to discern between ET and God. Because if ET can read your mind from a distance, that's godlike. If they can know everything about you, that's godlike. And if they can perform things with their technology that dazzle you, that's godlike. Now, if they also express goodness in the form of, like I think they have, in the form of crop circles. And you combine all of that technology, telepathy, and also goodness of heart, if they have that, then there's no way that I would call that demonic. I would say that that has to be good and that I want to know more. Okay? So if you're saying that the strong delusion is good-natured ETs coming here to help us, I'm sorry. I'm not accepting that as a trick. I'm taking that as something that we desperately need. Our country, our world cannot be fixed on its own. I know there's a lot of people that hope that it could be, but I'm telling you, it can't be, and it needs to be right now. It needs to be fixed right now. Because there's so much suffering, and at some point, suffering is no longer a teacher. It's just a disaster. And so I'm not going to accept that our very salvation is the devil. Sorry. If there's something that can save this planet, I'm taking it. But that leads me to also consider the idea that Jesus himself is working with these ETs. Now, I have to admit that I have a narrow scope so far on that. And that is that all I can think of that he is actually working with are the Greys. And I think the reason he's working with them is because they do have a problem physically because of their eons of cloning. And they're trying to take a step backwards by mixing with us, getting some of their roots, I guess, back into them. And they're doing that by creating hybrids. So they're kind of like taking a step towards us, and we're taking a step towards them, because they supposedly have been genetically enhancing us for, according to Bob Lazar, what he read in that pamphlet, for decades. And they probably genetically engineered us to begin with. But what I think is that Jesus probably is making a deal, has made a deal with the Greys, that he's going to help them in where they want to be. And in return, they are going to, or have already done, genetic changes to us that are going to allow us to graduate into the galaxy, into our Star Trek future. So I have very little evidence for this. It's just my gut feeling and an inspiration that I had about 25 years ago. I really do think that they can't come separately. Jesus has to, if Jesus is coming back, and it says, I got to read you a couple of quotes here. Could Jesus really be? Let's talk about the kingdom of heaven and what he said about that. Now, the context here, the question is, what is the kingdom of heaven, right? And my answer is, it's got to be the cosmos, but perhaps in a higher dimension, maybe, because. But even the cosmos is a great candidate for something called the kingdom of heaven. The only problem is that we always thought of that as a place where you go to when you die. And Jesus said that my kingdom is not of this world. But I think death is only required because we need this higher vibrational body. And it could be that, the Bible says that this can be given to us when the time comes. A new body, our natures will be changed. And so that's pretty damn exciting. But what is the kingdom of heaven according to Jesus? Well, here's a quote, and I got to give you a little context, because he was speaking to a group of people about John the Baptist, who was in prison at the time for having slandered King Herod appropriately. Given he didn't slander him, he told the truth, but King Herod was offended and wanted his head, put him in prison. So now he's in prison, and people are asking, what about John, Jesus? And Jesus turned around and said, among those that are born of women, there is not a greater prophet than John the Baptist. But he that is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he, John. Okay, so that's a pretty good sentence, because it starts with, for I say unto you, among those that are born of women, there is not a greater prophet than John the Baptist. But in the kingdom of heaven, John is actually the least great of those beings that are in the kingdom of heaven. So apparently there are beings who are not born of women. That's the implication there, okay? Another thing Jesus said that's kind of ET related is that he says, quote, and other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. Them also must I bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold, one shepherd. All right. So what is he talking about there? Other sheep that are not of this fold, that he is, that he must also bring. And they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Wow. What the heck is he talking about? Could it be the Gentiles? It could be, but he didn't say the Gentiles. And every other time when he talked about the Gentiles, he said the Gentiles. But this time he just said other sheep. Could it be the dead? Well, it could be, except that I think that is a given that the dead are going to be with going to the kingdom of heaven. So I don't think he's talking about the dead. I really do think he's talking about E.T. We'll see. The other thing that I have in my notes here is that the Lord's Prayer says it beckons the kingdom. It says, thy kingdom come to earth, you know. And Jesus said that the kingdom was there when he was there, because he said, look around, you know, because people asked him, are you the one? And he said, well, actually, John the Baptist sent a question from jail to Jesus saying, are you the one, or should we look for another? Because he was wondering, why haven't you come and let me out of jail? But Jesus said that if you look around, and he said, tell John to look around, tell John what you see. The deaf receive their hearing, the blind receive their sight, the lame are walking. It looks to me like the kingdom of heaven has come to earth. That's what he said. So when we use that Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, he's teaching us to ask for that kingdom to come to earth. So, you know, I mean, then Revelation talks about that huge 144-mile cube that's called New Jerusalem, that's going to like land on earth when Jesus comes back. It sounds like a big mothership, you know, but I don't know. So this is all under the topic of what is the kingdom of heaven, and I think that the kingdom of heaven is the cosmos, I do think that we're going to be changed before we enter the cosmos with our technology that we're going to develop in all our Star Trek future and all that. But yeah, I think it's the cosmos. So that's kind of an interesting thing, you know. Then the only thing, what else do we have here? Are abductions evidence of malevolence? This is something that is being pushed on Twitter. But, you know, the question that if you actually, here's the interesting thing, is that 85% of abductees say that they don't regret the experience and wish the experience would continue, that they've got something out of it. And I can understand that because, gosh, being in contact with an alien species and telepathic contact at that, it could really have an effect on you. It could really be exciting in a way. And you could feel like you're in on something that most people are not in on. And that's a good feeling. But then there's, you couple that with the stigma that humans have placed on this, thanks to your government, that saying that these people must be crazy. It's another thing that the government really needs, a really major kick in the ass for that, you know, that kind of thing. So the stigma that these abductees feel is horrible. You know, they're isolated. They can't really talk about it. If their own family thinks oh honey, that couldn't happen. You know, so that's a problem. But as far as it being malevolent, it depends on who you talk to. Like Rick Doty over on Thomas Fessler channel, which I had to leave because I do not agree with anything that person says. I think they're one of the most misguided people on YouTube regarding the UFO situation. And Rick Doty is a fearmonger, and he says that he has multiple things that he's heard that he doesn't like to talk about, but he did give one example of an abductee that apparently had all her fingernails torn out during the abduction. Doesn't make sense to you. I've never heard anything like that. If it's true, it's terrible. But it's, I don't think it's true. So I'm just not going to, I mean, why doesn't that person come out to the public and say what the hell happened? I would, especially now when there's much, you could at least go on YouTube and say, these bastards are evil. They did this to me. Here's what they did. They didn't care. And I hate them. And I think they should be destroyed. That's what you need to hear as evidence of malevolence. We don't hear that at all. What we hear are confused people, sometimes happy people, fascinated people, occasionally angry people like Jim Sparks, who started out calling them evil, but ended up years later saying, I was wrong. They're not evil. They actually helped me. Which was an amazing turnaround, because he was probably the only person who was really screaming evil for a while. Now there's a million of them on Twitter. So there is a big debate about this, and it frustrates me. I feel like there's a bunch of Karens out there that just want to, you know, they don't realize their salvation is near, and a total transformation of the planet. And that's what we deserve after all this suffering that we've been through. But no, they think that we deserve, or they don't even have the concept of deserve. It's just all they're used to is pain, so more pain just makes more sense. It's very sad. But I think I have covered everything I want to talk about, and now I'm very excited to get to the questions that you guys have asked. So where am I at in terms of recording? Holy shit, I've been recording for an hour and 20 minutes already. All right. When I come back, I will resume with your excellent questions. I will be right back.